In this lesson, we are going to talk about parallel lines and transversals. Let's talk about some vocabulary first. First, parallel lines are lines that will never meet. A transversal is a line that crosses at least two other lines. You can see an example of that in yellow. Congruent is the same size and shape. Supplementary is when two angles add to equal 180 degrees. Adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other. The two angles should share a common side and vertex. Linear pair angles are adjacent angles that form a straight line. Vertical angles are two angles that are opposite each other when two straight lines cross. Corresponding angles are two angles on the same side of the transversal, but one is inside the parallel lines and the other is outside the parallel lines. Alternate interior angles are two angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal and both inside the parallel lines. Alternate exterior angles are two angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal and both are on the outside of the parallel lines. Same side, or it could be called consecutive interior angles, are two angles that are on the same side of the transversal and both are on the inside of the parallel lines. And finally, same side exterior angles. These are two angles that are on the same side of the transversal and both are on the outside of the parallel lines. Let's look at examples to see how these angle pairs look. First, linear pair angles. Recall that these are adjacent angles that form a straight line. Our pairs of linear pair angles are 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. The relationship that exists with linear pair angles is that they are supplementary. Recall that that means that the two angles should add to equal 180 degrees. Next, vertical angles. These are angles that are opposite from each other when two lines cross. Our pairs of vertical angles are 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 5 and 8, and 6 and 7. The relationship that exists with vertical angles is that they will always be congruent or equal. Next, corresponding angles. These are angles that are on the same side of the transversal, but one is inside the parallel lines and the other is outside. The pairs of corresponding angles are 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 3 and 7, and 4 and 8. The relationship that exists for corresponding angles is that they are congruent or equal. Next, alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are angles that are on opposite or alternate sides of the transversal, and they are both inside the parallel lines. You have two pairs of alternate interior angles, and that is 3 and 6 and 4 and 5. The relationship for alternate interior angles is that the two angles in each pair are congruent. Next, alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are angles that are on the opposite or alternate sides of the transversal and both outside the parallel lines. Your pairs of alternate exterior angles are 1 and 8 and 2 and 7. The relationship that exists for alternate exterior angles is that the two angles in each pair will be congruent or equal. Next, same side or consecutive interior angles. These are going to be angles that are on the same side of the transversal and both inside the parallel lines. So your pairs of same side or consecutive interior angles are 3 and 5 and 4 and 6. Each pair of same side or consecutive interior angles will be supplementary. The two angles should add to equal 180 degrees. And finally, same side exterior angles. These are angles that are on the same side of the transversal, but both outside the parallel lines. The pairs of same side exterior angles are 1 and 7 and 2 and 8. The relationship that exists for same side exterior angles is that each pair of angles is supplementary. They should add to equal 180 degrees. Now just a note, on all of these, I have the same exact set of parallel lines and transversals and the position of the 1 through 8 numbers are always in the same spot. Keep in mind that in another picture, your 1 through 8 numbers could be in different spots, so you have to make sure you look at the actual relationship and description of these types of angles. The numbers on the angles are just for reference for these examples. Let's look at some examples that you will have to do with parallel lines and transversals. The first few examples say to name the angle relationship. So you are going to name it as linear pair, vertical, corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side or consecutive interior, and same side exterior. So you have to look at the position of the angles and the relationship that exists between them. So on number 1, I noticed that angles x and y are next to each other. When angles are next to each other, they are called adjacent. When the adjacent angles form a straight line, they are what are called linear pair angles. So for number 1, these are linear pair angles. On number 2, I noticed that x and y are on opposite sides of the transversal. They are not next to each other, but they are both inside the parallel lines. So these are what are called alternate interior angles. And finally, number 3, I noticed that x and y are on the same side of the transversal, but one is inside the parallel lines and the other is outside. So these are what are called corresponding angles. The next set of examples want you to name the angle relationship, which is what we did on the previous problems, but also find the measure of each angle indicated. It will be indicated by a question mark. So let's go ahead and look at the first example, number 4. For angle 47 degrees and question mark, I notice that they are on the same side of the transversal. They're both on the right side, and they're both inside the parallel lines. So since they're both on the same side and they're both inside, these are same side or consecutive interior angles. And just a note that same side interior angles have the relationship that they are supplementary, which means they should equal 180 degrees. So all I have to do is subtract the angle that I know, 47 degrees, subtract it from 180, and that will give me my answer. So question mark equals 133 degrees. Next, on number 5, I notice that these are opposite from each other when two lines cross. So these are vertical angles. Vertical angles are always congruent. So that means that these two angles should be equal. So therefore, question mark equals 87 degrees. Next, number 6. I notice that these angles are on opposite sides of the transversal and both outside the parallel lines. So these are going to be alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. So therefore, question mark equals 64 degrees. Finally, on number 7, I notice that these angles are on the same side of the transversal and both outside the parallel lines. So these are going to be same side exterior angles. Same side exterior angles are supplementary, which means they add to equal 180 degrees. So therefore, all I have to do is subtract 105 from 180, and I get my angle, 75 degrees. So question mark equals 75 degrees. Thanks for watching this video and participating in this lesson. Remember, if you have any questions about the notes or the homework, please do not hesitate to ask.